For a short time on the bill. I wasn't on the Select Committee, but I would like to acknowledge the wisdom of the Select Committee, because in reading through the notes, there were clearly some changes made that improved this bill, and I acknowledge the efforts of all members present. We do support the bill. It is effectively an evolution of Labor's bill, the Education Amendment Bill number 3, with some omissions, and I'll speak to those shortly, Mr. Speaker. I have to say that I'm sure it is a huge blow for some members on the other side. Mr. Joyce in particular would have been hugely disappointed that the wisdom of the Select Committee removed the ability for corporates to step in when there are problems with a school. It endorsed, I guess, what is current government policy around individual responsibility, because it left in place, the Select Committee in its collective wisdom decided that a commissioner, an individual, should be responsible should there be problems at a school, rather than some corporate stepping in and taking over. And I know that his long-term agenda, of course, as is the National Party, is to corporatise the schools and all their property. But anyway, the Select Committee thankfully stepped in. Labor supports the bill for another good, sound reason, Mr. Speaker. I've just been reading a book, an article here, Animal Welfare, whose responsibility is it? Children's welfare, whose responsibility is it? Well, it is the government's. It is our collective responsibility. And we should, whether it be animal welfare or law and order or biosecurity, we should always support legislation in this House that provides good guidance. What we've seen in recent times, Mr. Speaker, in ensuring reference back to this bill, as I will always speak, is that penalties have been increased across the board with the belief that that will improve behaviour. If the government had taken that same consistent approach here, they would have said, we will double the penalties for anyone who inappropriately interferes with a child or doesn't ensure that the highest standards of education are carried out at a school. We'll double the penalty, and that will ensure that we get the best outcome. Well, that's done. That's what the government has done in the areas of biosecurity, in the areas of animal welfare, in the areas of law and order. What this bill does, quite rightfully, because it's an evolution of Labor's own bill, it puts in place some preventative measures. That is the ability to deal with the sad reality that we have in this country, that not everyone who wants to be part of our education system is actually there for the welfare and the benefit of the children. There are some people, and we've had them, who needed to be checked before they got into the education system. This bill does make some improvements in that area. The schools can go directly to the police, and I'm sure that that process will not be abused. We hope it won't be. They go to the police for the right reasons to ensure that the people coming into their school, they aren't, in fact, potentially harmful or might not carry out any harmful acts against the children. It's a sad reality, but it's one we need. I was pleased to hear also the government saying and spouting on about the wonderful benefits of teacher registration, because I can remember the same party objecting to registration of people in the early childhood sector. Absolutely objecting, saying there was no value in it whatsoever. Mr. Speaker, this bill upholds the value of registration of teachers in the education system, and that is great. I just wish that that National Party would reflect back on some of the idiotic things they said when it came to registration of early childhood teachers that we were promoting, that we knew was of value to the early childhood education system, and the National Party and opposition absolutely opposed. Well, they've done another U-turn. That's great, because it will benefit the children of this country. Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to talk for too long, but to say that the bill is not as good as it could have been, because it did remove from Labor's Amendment Bill number 3 some key provisions that the government talks of, but doesn't always follow through. Because what we had in the bill, Mr. Speaker, the original bill that the government picked up...
Point of order. Now, Mr. Speaker, you have already talked to two members of this House. This is an experienced member of the House who knows well the limitations of second readings. And this is not changes. This is a new bill introduced by this government to talk about what the previous government might or might not have wanted to put in a bill is outside the scope.
Let me just make this point. When members get up to make a point of order, they shouldn't sort of refer to the character of the person, because then I'm sort of perplexed as to, is the member really making a point of order, or are they doing something else? But the point, we seem to now be wanting to confine this debate to Standing Order 106.1 and 2, which is, does require members to specifically talk about the bill as printed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I am always referring to the bill, Mr. Speaker, what it could have been and what it's not. That is reference to the bill, Mr. Speaker. And the bill, in its original inception, Mr. Speaker, was a very good one. The government has had the wisdom to pick up the key objectives of the bill, Mr. Speaker, and turn it into this bill. The Select Committee in its wisdom has made some amendments, and I applaud them, in spite of, I'm sure, the objections of the Minister currently in the House, because she too has yet to understand many things in the education system, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, can I just say that the bill should have in it, Mr. Speaker, because I know these issues were discussed at Select Committee, the bill should have in it the original requirements that placed responsibility on the school boards, Mr. Speaker. The Minister there, you see, doesn't see the value in having some requirements on school boards. She does not believe, this is why she stands up and objects to me saying this, Mr. Speaker, because she doesn't believe that the provisions that were in the original bill, in its concept, that boards of trustees would have had a responsibility to ensure, firstly, that every person who was entitled to be enrolled was enrolled at the school, Mr. Speaker, that the boards of trustees should have had as a core legal responsibility, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that there was education provided to every student at that school, and most importantly, Mr. Speaker, because it goes to the heart of what I think we as a Parliament want.
Point of order.
And Tolly.
I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, but this is not in this bill. This has never been in this bill. If the ruling that you just gave before was to confine to the bill, then the member should come back to what is actually in the bill.
I'll deal with this. If the member has another point of order, it is speaking to the point of order.
To the point of order,
Chris Hipkins.
Mr. Speaker, this bill makes amendments to the responsibilities of school boards of trustees. It must therefore be relevant to talk about the responsibilities of a school board of trustees, which is exactly what Damien O'Connor was doing. I appreciate the Minister may not agree with everything he's saying. That's why we're the opposition and they're the government.
Now look, I just sort of gave a little warning that you shouldn't talk about character and what other people might be thinking earlier, because then I'm bound to start thinking that the member is speaking to the point of order in order to score another point. And I wish members would desist from that. I've been listening carefully to the debate, and I actually think that Honourable Damien O'Connor has probably been a bit nearer of it than some other members who have actually been speaking on this. But we've established some rules and asked the member to be conscious of speaking to the bill.
I have no wish to hold up the House in the passage of this bill, because Labor does support it, Mr. Speaker. It's, as I say, a good attempt to try and improve governance arrangements around schools, Mr. Speaker. But I'm saying it could be better. And we must in this House not limit ourselves to current thinking, but say what could have been and what we should move on to next. It is absolutely essential that the Minister has some vision, because if she thinks, Mr. Speaker, if the Minister thinks this is the last word on good corporate governance in schools, or good governance, then she's got a lot to learn. She's got a lot to learn, Mr. Speaker, and I think she will be back in this House. She'll be back in the House. In fact, she may even introduce amendments and supplementary order papers, and I challenge her to do so, to bring into this House adjustments that will Legally,